Basically, you asked me 4 questions. There will be 4 slides, 2 minutes per slide. So they will be rushing through. First, as you mentioned, Iran has the highest rate of infection and death in the Middle East. If you take the figure of number of deaths per 1 million population, it's 49, which is certainly below the high rates that Italy or Spain have, which is over 300, but it's much above the regional average, which is 1 per million, especially in the most advanced countries like Israel, Saudi Arabia, or Emirates. It did start to test people early, but it put into place the quarantine, especially in the city of Qom, where it started late, and it conducted its general elections, which certainly contributed to mass infections, and it closed its flights from China also late. Then it mobilized the military, which of course is a very important component of society in Iran. Healthcare staff who died of the virus were made martyrs, and they publicized a lot about their sacrifice. The paradox about Iran is that it has a very resilient healthcare system, very widespread, very advanced, but in this case, it was very much affected by the American sanctions. Of course, there was, as could be expected, some disinformation or lack of information, some disinformation actually coming from opposition groups outside the country, some extremist violence, but mostly due to some religious groups protesting against the closures of mosques. But these were isolated incidents. The economic impact, of course, will be still very early to evaluate clearly, but it will be much worse than in the other Middle East countries, where now it's assessed that it will reach around 11%. Well, in Iran, probably a decrease in GDP of 25 or 30%. As we can expect, the main reason is a drop in the oil price, aggravated by the ongoing sanctions, and therefore the budget deficit leads the government to print money. The central bank keeps printing money, which of course will lead to high inflation. And paradoxically, the stock exchange remains strong with a skyrocketing dollar, and that also can be explained by this context of inflation. As we know, Iran asked the IMF for a $5 billion loan, but this is being blocked by the US at the moment. On the JCPOA, as we know, the crisis didn't start with this pandemic, but it started with the US withdrawal. 1 year after the US withdrawal, Iran started its measures of suspension of implementation of some of the technical commitments, including stockpile of low-enriched uranium, percentage of enrichment, number of centrifuges, etc. But it didn't stop implementing the rest of the agreement, including IAEA inspections, although there's been a recent dispute with the IAEA about some isolated facilities. Now, obviously, Iran wanted to put pressure on the Europeans, to put pressure on the US for lifting sanctions. The EU's reaction, or the E3 reactions, was the triggering of the dispute resolution mechanism. But at this stage, this process is suspended at the request of the EU High Representative, who's chairing this process in order to allow for more negotiation. One of the effects of the COVID could have been finally the operation of the INSTEX mechanism to allow for humanitarian transfers or trade from Europe. Actually, INSTEX had been in place for some time, and the first transfer that took place is not directly related to COVID, but it could pave the way for more transfers, bypassing, in a sense, the US sanctions.
Mark,
Iran's strategy, obviously, it could be, but I would leave it to the better experts on this issue to decide whether it's likely that a debate will take place. It's sort of latent in Iran between those who want to focus more on the economy, on healthcare, on domestic issues, and those who support the external wars and the military. As was mentioned by Kristen, there are opportunities for de-escalation or talks on Yemen with the UAE and possibly Saudi Arabia, but still we are in a situation where there are, it's very volatile. The risk of military incidents in Iraq or against U.S. interests, or in Syria with Israel, and therefore, it's difficult to say at this stage what Iran would choose as strategy to take advantage of these positive openings or opportunities, or still maintain some military pressure in the region. Thank you.